Welcome back to the Bible Made Easy with Stephen Craig. In our last video, we looked at the divided kingdom, where on the death of Solomon, that the kingdom divided. You had the northern kingdom of Israel, southern kingdom of Judah. This northern kingdom is going to last for 200 years before they go into captivity. The southern kingdom is going to last 300 years before they go into captivity. So that's what we're going to look at today, is at the captivity and the return. And we'll begin by focusing in on this northern kingdom of Israel. I gave you a chart last time to show you the kings, both of Israel and Judah. Broke this down for you, and we said that this northern kingdom, that they were made up of 9 different dynasties. And that first king, Jeroboam, established this northern kingdom because he didn't want the people of Israel to go to Judea to worship, afraid that they might follow the king Rehoboam, that he set up a false system of worship. He set up 2 golden calves, one in the northern city of Dan and the southern city of Bethel. And so all these kings that are going to reign are all going to be idolaters. They're all going to worship those golden calves. We said that Israel even had some of his darkest days when the family of Omri reigned. That's when this wicked man Ahab married a wicked woman named Jezebel. Jezebel was the daughter of Ithbaal, the king of the Sidonians. And so you can tell by their names, Ithbaal and Jezebel, they worshiped the god Baal. And so during the reign of Ahab, they introduced Baal worship to Israel. And it was, again, some of Israel's darkest days, but God used Jehu to rid the kingdom of Israel of Baal worship, and he killed off the family of Omri. But he continued in the sin. All the kings continued in the sin of Jeroboam and worshiping the golden calves. And although Jehu had a pretty good dynasty, you see that after his family, the kingdom fell into a period of instability until they went into Assyrian captivity around 721 BC. Now, this is going to be important changes happening, because before captivity, God's people are going to be limited to the land of Palestine. Their main occupation is going to be that as farmers, and their worship is going to be that of animal sacrifice, because these were idolaters here, but in the south they're going to be worshiping, of course, animal sacrifices according to God's word at the temple. But as a direct result of captivity and being scattered out into the Gentile world, we're going to see first a change of geography, because no longer are God's people going to be limited to the land of Palestine, but they're going to be spread throughout the Gentile world. Also, we're going to see a change in occupation. Before captivity, God's people are going to be mainly farmers, but after captivity, they're going to be merchants, and that's continued Jewish people all through history, even down to modern times. And then a third thing that's going to happen is a change in focus. Because before captivity, the worship focuses around animal sacrifice. But as a direct result of captivity, when they were scattered out in the Gentile world, they started meeting together in what they call synagogues, and the focus of worship was the scriptures. And of course, that's important, because we see in the time of Christ that synagogue worship was something. So that was kind of God's way of getting the world ready for the coming of Christ, with that, where they would have synagogue worship with the focus on scriptures. Looking again at our map, before captivity, during that time of the divided kingdom, you had the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. But you had the Assyrian Empire. We had mentioned that during that period of the divided kingdom, the 2 main powers were Egypt to the south, and of course Assyria, and this was the great Assyrian Empire. But in 721, they came down and took that northern kingdom into captivity and spread them out among the nations. And so this is what it would have looked like. No longer, you wouldn't have had that northern kingdom anymore, because they were scattered, and you would have had only the kingdom of Judah left. Now let's look at this southern kingdom of Judah. We see the main difference between Israel and Judah is all these kings that reign are going to be descendants of David. We said that some of these kings were good kings, but some of these kings were just as wicked as the kings of the north, guilty of idolatry, disobedience to God. We see how far they deteriorated. At some point, they even offered their children as sacrifice to idols. That's how far they got away from God, and that's why they're eventually going to go not into Assyrian, but into Babylonian captivity. Because what's going to happen is you're going to have this great Assyrian Empire. Like I said, during the time of the divided kingdom, you're going to have Assyria and Egypt, but there's going to be another kingdom arise, and this is going to be the Babylonians. And the Babylonians then, under Nebuchadnezzar, are going to rise up and they're going to conquer Assyria and also conquer Egypt. And in the process, they're going to take God's people into captivity. Now, Nebuchadnezzar is going to come in three ways. He's going to come in 606, and this was when Daniel and the richest people are going to be taken into captivity. He's going to come in 597. This is when Ezekiel and a second group of captives will be taken into captivity. And he's going to come a third time in 586. This is when the last king, Zedekiah, rebels against Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar is going to come and destroy the temple and Jerusalem. So it's important that we look at these last five kings of Judah. We're going to see the last good king that reigns is going to be Josiah. And then Josiah is going to have three sons that are going to reign and one grandson. Now what's going to happen is that in the time of Josiah, there's going to be a king by the name of Pharaoh Necho. And Pharaoh Necho is going to leave Egypt, and he's going to go up to try and help the Assyrians fight against Babylon. I had mentioned in one of the earlier videos that as you get back in the early days of the Bible, it's hard to date things, but the closer we get to the time of Christ, because of historic events, it's easier to date events, and this is true here because history records that the Egyptians were defeated by the Babylonians in the famous Battle of Carchemish in 605. So that's how we know that some of these dates are accurate. But what had happened earlier to that date, 605, it was when Pharaoh Necho was on his way to help the Assyrians fight against the Babylonians, and Josiah came out against him. Now, the Pharaoh Necho told Josiah, he said, turn back. He said, my fight is not with you. God told me to go fight against the Babylonians. But because Josiah was hard-headed, he didn't turn back. So Pharaoh Necho wounded Josiah, and because of his wounds, he went to the city of Megiddo, and he died. And so what had happened then, as Josiah died, the people made his son Jehoahaz king, but he only reigned 3 months because Pharaoh Necho, on his way back to Egypt, took Jehoahaz and took him to Egypt with him, and he made his brother Jehoiakim king. And Jehoiakim's going to be an important figure because we're going to read about him prominently in the book of 2 Kings, 2 Chronicles, and also he's mentioned many times in the book of Jeremiah. And we see he was not particularly a good man, but he's important biblically. Now, he's going to die in 597, the second time that Nebuchadnezzar is going to come against Jerusalem. The people are going to make his son Jehoiakim reign for just a short time. He's only going to reign for 3 months. And when the Babylonians come in that second time, they're going to take this Jehoiakim. He's going to be carried into captivity where actually he is going to be treated well. But then it's going to be his uncle, the brother of Jehoiakim, who's going to become that last king of Israel, Zedekiah. And he's going to reign in those last days. But again, what he's going to do is near the end of his reign, he's going to go behind Nebuchadnezzar's back. He's going to try and make an alliance with Egypt. And it's because of that Nebuchadnezzar is going to come against him in his fury and destroy the temple in Jerusalem in 586. And he's going to bring judgment on Zedekiah. He's going to be taken up to Riblah for judgment. He's going to watch as his sons are killed. And once he sees his sons killed, Nebuchadnezzar is going to gouge out his eyes, so he's going to be blinded, put in chains, and taken away to Babylon. So is the judgment for rebelling against Nebuchadnezzar. Now, God had predicted through his prophet Jeremiah that they were going to go into Babylon captivity, but he had also prophesied that they were only going to stay there for a period of 70 years. So they were taken into captivity in 606, and in 536, the Babylonians are going to be conquered by the Persian empires. Now the Persians, it's actually going to be the Medes and the Persians that are going to join together. Here's Babylon, and the Medes and Persians are going to establish a large empire. The Medes and Persians are what's in modern day. Babylon was modern day Iraq, and the Medes and Persians are modern day Iran. This is an important archaeological discovery, which is Cyrus's cylinder that actually tells of the fall of Babylon. And Cyrus is going to be the one, after the people had spent those 70 years in captivity, he's going to issue a decree to allow God's people to return. And this is going to happen in 536. That decree of Cyrus is recorded in 2 Kings, 2 Chronicles, and the first part of the book of Ezra. We have the decree of Cyrus, and the group's going to be led back by a man by the name of Zerubbabel, who's a descendant of David. He's listed in the genealogy of Christ. He's going to lead a small group, about 50,000, back to the land of Palestine. It's going to look a lot different from when they went into captivity, because now you're going to have foreigners in the land, and you're going to have this, what was the kingdom of Judah, you're going to have it reestablished by these group that return. They're going to rebuild the city of Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. And these are the events that occurred in after captivity. In 520, they're going to lay the foundation of the temple. And then in 516, the temple is going to be built. The book of Esther is actually going to occur in here around 480. Then in 458, Ezra, the scribe, is going to lead another group back from captivity back to Palestine. In 444 is when Nehemiah, cupbearer to the king of Persia, he's going to lead a third group back, and he also is going to help to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. And this is going to lead us then up to the time of Malachi, who's going to be the last prophet to prophesy before you get into the period of the 400-year silence, before you get to New Testament period. So that covers the exile, the captivity of Israel and Judah, and then their return. In our next video, we're going to look at this period again. We're going to look at it in the prophets, because the prophets were active mostly during the time of the divided kingdom, but we're going to see the prophets during captivity and the prophets after captivity. So I hope you'll join me for that video. I hope that this video has been helpful.